So this is going to be a very interactive session. We really wanted it to focus on crowdsourcing of the hottest topics in mobile marketing. So if you have questions, get them. I'm going to start us off with a couple. So and maybe what I'll go is to Joe first and ask you what's the most important aspect to any mobile marketing strategy. So Joe, let me start with you, and then I'll have the other panelists talk about that too.
Well, I think the first thing is to think about what that question is. And I believe that most people don't think of mobile as deserving a strategy, as being something that you need to sit down and figure out how does this fit within the rest of my channels. And to look at mobile as a different channel, as a separate channel from everything else, but it needs to be integrated within. So the way that we really approach any client is to think of it in terms of what are those touch points that the customer has with your brand all around it, and how does mobile fit into that? And so developing an overarching strategy that goes over SMS, that goes over location base, that goes over app building, that goes over every mobile capability is really step one. So have the strategy, work on the strategy, and think of it in terms of something that fits in with the rest of your marketing set of capabilities.
Brent, how about you? What do you think?
I definitely agree with that. I think anyone that's been in technology, period, has seen the disastrous effects that cost overruns and timing overruns can have, especially as you go reporting up the chain of command. So going off of what Joe said, I mean, having the correct plan in place before you do any design, before you do any development, before you do any download driving, is extremely important, just similar to a lot of other things in life.
Carrie, how about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with what everybody said. I think a couple of additional key points. There's so many brands that have different marketing departments, that have different agencies that don't necessarily talk and have different budgets, that a lot of time with the bigger brands, it's very hard to have an overarching mobile strategy because every budget is trying to hit their own goals. So really trying to utilize or have a central point of contact. We see a lot of brands running the exact same programs with different companies and different agencies that aren't utilizing the data that they're getting from SMS campaigns or rewards programs, things like that, cross-channel. So I think that's big. And then I think, too, a lot of brands and agencies particularly look at mobile as a campaign. And so they run it one time, it works really well. Now you're sitting on 150,000 cell phone numbers, and it's not touched again. So before a campaign is executed, what's the strategy to reuse that data post the campaign?
How do you move it past that? I mean, I host probably 2,000 CMOs a year, where I sit down with them at least 4 times a year, where I'm the host of blah, 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 blah. And I would guarantee you that for 80% of them, their mobile strategy is, I have an iPhone app.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, seriously, I think that, and I've talked to them just very bluntly. So how do you get them to move in to see the value? I mean, and move the strategy, and what should be the components of that?
Well, I mean, strategy is easy. I mean, the one thing everybody in this room has right on the table is their phone. And so if you're missing that, and marketing, TV spots, we have DVRs, radio we're listening to, our iPhones, iPads, iPods, whatever it may be. The demographic under 35 is not responding to direct mail and services, so it has to be a key part of the strategy. And customers are demanding it. I mean, if you look at mobile websites, the drop-off of going to a traditional site, if your brand doesn't have a mobile website, your revenue is going to get killed.
Yeah, but I'd still tell you that, I mean, I saw B2B magazine yesterday, and it says the #1 campaign tool still in effect today, most effective is email. It's one of their arguments. So I'm going to ask you a quick poll. How many of you have iPhones? Raise your hand. Holy shit. How many of you have Android? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you have Blackberries? Raise your hand. All right, so it's kind of interesting to see. That's a cool thing. What, Joe, were you going to jump in there on that one?
Yeah, I think, look, the strategy, any marketing strategy has to be there because you think you're going to make money, And there's so much fogging around mobile, in my opinion. Everyone's talking about apps, and there's a lot of bright, shiny objects that many people in the C-suite love to put their hands around, but it needs to make money. And the idea is a mobile strategy needs to be something that creates customer engagement to get them to buy something. And I think that we forget that. I think we forget the fact that there are pieces within any mobile strategy that today you could get started just by opting customers in and starting to send them text messages to get them to do what you need them to do, and it'll make money. And it's interesting what you said about email. Yeah, it is the most effective from an ROI perspective. It's the most effective tool. Has the highest gross profit return on investment, but there's no response. 0.02, 0.03, there's no response there. Whereas in mobile messaging, you're looking at 6, 8, 10% response rates with very, very large databases.
To a very targeted group.
To a very targeted group that says yes to you. And we've opted in 20, 25 million people over the last 3 years. And the idea is get them engaged and then move them to all those other channels. And I think there's so much fogging around mobile and all the bright, shiny objects. The golden ticket is that opt-in, is that customer saying yes first, and then moving them to the channels that you need.
So how do you get people beyond that? So how do you get them beyond just that shiny object? Because that's what happened. I mean, I was a chief marketing officer, and people come to me and they would basically sell me this bright, shiny object. They would come to me and talk to me about building a buzz campaign, which, quite frankly, I would turn to and say, you say buzz to me one more time, buzz yourself out the door. Because in the end, it's about driving the bottom line. So that's, more revenue, and then of course, CFOs always say, ooh, it's about driving. I'd say, well, we need to do more in sales. Well, Jeff, we have to do profitable sales. Like, no shit. That, like, the one doesn't go without the other. So how do you move them through that? How do you get them moved into that? What's the best method that you guys see or that you're seeing to get them moved into the bottom line?
Well, continuing on with the previous question about how are you speaking to a CMO, I mean, everyone here is in marketing and they understand marketing is not necessarily just creativity, it's about data. And it's about driving data and about identifying trends. And 2012 is it's a big year for mobile. But it's also a big year for understanding data, because what you're seeing in the marketplace is the ability to not only understand quantitative data, so what revenue are you driving, how many downloads are you driving, but there are features out there now that help you understand qualitative data. And the qualitative data for marketing is key. And I would say being able to capture that data, both quantitative and qualitative, and present it in a form that has to do with ROI is going to be the most important thing for everyone in here that is trying to sell new features, new apps to their bosses and their bosses' bosses. So a company that I am very close with, that I think very highly of, that many of you probably heard of, is Bazaarvo. And Bazaarvo's feature set is understanding what the customer is doing, how they're interacting with the app, what works, what doesn't, being able to identify those trends, which you can then turn into more successful app features. So to address your question, I think that being able to capture that data, being able to identify trends and see where things are going, what's working, what's not, is definitely the key to making the most of your mobile strategy in 2012 and beyond.
Let's talk about budgets for a minute. So let me address this to Carrie. Carrie, if I have a limited budget, what should take priority? Should it be about driving traffic and awareness of my mobile site or of my mobile apps? I mean, if I had to pick one or the other, and I had a real limited budget, and if I want to drive traffic and awareness, okay, which ultimately is going to get me bottom line, should I be more focused on my mobile site or my mobile apps?
I mean, we get this question, 5 times a day, right? And we do both, so we really don't care which way our customer goes. But if you're looking at purely, I have a budget, what's going to give me the biggest bang for the buck, it's going to be a mobile website, no doubt, because most of our clients are having 35 to 60% of their traffic coming from mobile devices right now, and they're having people drop off, especially our apparel companies, our retailers, our restaurants, things like that. They're losing revenue every single day because the consumer hits it, they can't see the site, the tabs are low, they can't order, they can't do credit card information. So that's, the percentage of companies, brands that have mobile websites right now is, less than 10%, depending upon whose numbers you're reading. We see more initiatives right now and money dedicated to mobile web, and I think there's a big misnomenclature of mobile optimized versus real mobile web, and mobile optimized is great for that short-term stopgap, but it's not a long-term strategy. I mean, mobile optimized is, a developer that, ran a tool on your current website. People on the go don't care about your investor news and your about us. They want what they want on the go. They want to be able to purchase, they want to be able to order, they want to be able to see campaigns, and so it's an evolution. I mean, if you go mobile web first, you know what devices are coming in. Like this room, 75, 80% of iPhones. You wouldn't know that for your customers unless you're running the analytics, to see that. So a lot of CMOs and CEOs just say, we need an iPhone app. Well, what do you need an iPhone app for? And
again, I think that's a lot of their strategy.
And we get the call all the time. Well, we rolled out an iPhone app, and we thought we'd have 100,000 people our first day, and we have 300. There's no marketing, there's no strategy behind it, whatever. But every customer we developed a mobile website for is astonished of how much people are going to the traffic, how many leads they're getting, how much revenue they're getting, how much online purchase. And it is your 90-day ROI. I mean, you are seeing your numbers instantly on your return on that mobile website. So
Joe, would you agree with that?
Absolutely, I really would. And what's really interesting is if you think about kind of going back to my South Dakota roots, the tail is wagging the dog.
Everybody's from South Dakota.
What's happening in web design and what's happening with mobile and with application design is now going back, and a lot of CMOs and a lot of retailers are going back and simplifying their websites because of the results that they're seeing on their mobile devices. Because what's happened over the years is, a normal web interface has become so complex and so difficult to manage. We've forgotten as retailers what we're here for. Let's make this easy. Let's make this a frictionless buy. And I think what's happening is that mobile applications and mobile web is almost turning it back to making it easy to navigate on a normal site.
It doesn't have to be pretty.
Yeah, it just needs to be easy.
I tell you, one of the determining factors I always found, it needs to be fast.
Well, yeah, I mean.
So easy, I think it goes with fast. Right?
Well, and I think, to that point, a lot of companies have really cool flash sites with all these videos and streaming, and, there's a lot of brands, if you pull up your own website on your phone right now, you're just going to get a white screen because you have flash and you don't have a mobile website. And, this hotel being one of them, if you look at the STK here and try to look at the steakhouse here, it's a completely black website because the whole site is in flash. So think of how many people in this restaurant were trying to look at a menu, and that place is losing business because their site is completely blank.
So how many brands do we have here? Raise your hands, just kind of rough. All right. So of those, how many of you have? All of you have apps? Okay, almost all. Almost all. How many of you have a true mobile site? About all. That's good. Well, you should. You're a mobile company. So let me ask you a question. So what's the best practice when it comes to determining, like the unique visitor overlap between your website and the mobile site and mobile apps? What's the best? You guys have some thoughts on what's the best way to do that? Do you care?
To determine across all three?
Yeah, right. I mean, I want to know what my customer base is coming in and where it's coming. What's some hints on some best ways to get some overlap on
Well, I mean, there's different analytic, we usually fall into the, analytic tools of, usually brands have their own analytic tools.
But are there some others that aren't so proprietary? I mean, part of the session is like, what's the crowdsourcing, so what's some suggestions on some tools do you have?
I haven't seen any tool that does a great job of doing that cross-border.
Anybody else got any?
Customized tools.
No, I mean, I was talking with Craig from Dave Ramsey about Apple's inability to really provide a great analytics package for the actual apps that they support. There's a huge space in the market right now for a very solid, very easy to use application or analytics package. But as I said earlier, that's almost one of the most important things happening in this space today. So if any of you have any great ideas, win some VC funding, I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards.
So let me ask, what do you see as the biggest game changer in terms of technology that you see right now on the horizon? So if you guys, you're experts, you're thought leaders, that's the reason why you're sitting on the stage for mobile. So what do you see as the biggest game changers in terms of technology that you see on the horizon right now? Let's go, Joe, with you first.
I think it's the tablet.
Yeah.
I really do. Everyone sees it right now as kind of this entertainment device, and which is what I use mine for, except for email. But I believe that as time goes on, we're going to be connected to tablets. Just the interactive aspect of a touch screen in a larger format, and brands being able to develop to utilize that device in new and interesting ways, I think is going to be really key for every brand.
I would say again, I keep on talking about 2012 as the year that is really going to define brands. I think if you don't have an app right now, customers will look at you and kind of scratch their head. But what you're seeing is a convergence of the ability of employees or enterprise employees to interact with customers. And that convergence is happening very quickly. And we are right on the verge of you walking into a store and an associate knowing your name, knowing your buying history, knowing what credit card you use, knowing where you came from, and being able to interact with you on a much more in-depth level. So you talk about sales, you talk about relationships. Right now we are at at a crux in the way people buy things. An example that I always like to talk about is when we were building an app for Michael's Arts and Crafts. We were talking about their strategy, we were talking about laying out their roadmap, and they didn't really have a lot of interest in offering e-commerce on their app. Because Michael's, as Jeffrey talked to earlier, your online presence is equal to your offline presence, and they had a very strong offline presence. So the idea behind the app was, how can we drive more people into our stores? Because once they're in the Michael stores, then you can interact with the associates. You don't buy one thing, you buy 10 things. And so that convergence that I'm talking about is ever increasing in the ability of brands to associate and connect with their customers. And I think that, hardware technology aside, that is the one thing that is going to really redefine the way that people buy things in general.
So I think a few things. I think augmented reality, has been really big in other countries, and we've always trended after, Asia and Europe. So if I look at what, we're doing in China and Europe, and, our strategies for companies there are very different than the U.S. However, we've been seeing some more consumer-facing augmented reality applications here, and we've probably had, the most in the last several months, very high interest, high budgets for augmented reality in the States from big brands. So connecting that virtual world to the real world with all the new smartphones and the two-way cameras, being to develop real applications that really have brands be innovators in their spaces.
So what's the application for that? We've had augmented reality for a while. We had Second Life. Right, remember Second Life?
Yeah, but that's all online. I'm talking about with your phone. So I walk into a you know, Abercrombie, Ann Taylor, Gap, whatever it is, and I can literally virtual, you know, dressing room, look at a sweater, see how it looks on me with the two-way camera, not have to go in the dressing room, see how the sweater looks on me in red, purple, green, and they don't have it in my size. I order it right from the app and it's overnighted to my house. Seeing virtual runways in stores with fashion shows, you know, grocery stores being able to, without POP and restrictions now, being able to see coupons virtually down the cereal aisle and order management to the back end, I mean, that's where we're headed.
So, but I heard the word a minute ago that said, I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm just trying to be real. I heard the word from two of you, close, that we're on the verge, we're at the crux. Do we really think that we're really on the verge for that? Do we really think that we're going to buy that stuff right now?
Well, it depends.
I mean, no
Depends on
tweeting
your
about
brand.
this. Let's just kind of keep this in the room. But I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, look, you know, I sell a book. I go into the book, and I know that that's supposed to be on the front display of every Barnes & Noble. Why? Because it's a Class A book, which means that that's the way the publishers work to have a Barnes & Noble. But yet, I can't find it because some $8 an hour employee is the difference between that. You're telling me I'm going to have to walk in with my phone and that $8 employee is going to recognize me?
I didn't say that.
Yeah, I didn't say that. Oh, how fast we jump off that ship, right, Brett? But no, but even the virtual nature. I mean, Nick's here from where did Nick at? From Gap, but you know. Do we really think we're going to have that? I mean,
yeah.
I had 17 CRM systems, for Christ's sakes. You know, I couldn't get those to talk to each other. So how am I supposed to do that in the retail environment?
I think that you bring up a very good point, and again, I'm going to bring it back to you, and your keynote is that we are on the verge, and the number one reason why we would fail to get to that other side is fear. So, you know, as Jeff mentioned, I'm in sales and marketing. Our biggest hurdle, and I'm sure, you know, Carrie and Joe have the same thing, our biggest hurdle is the CEO or the CMO that doesn't understand technology because they're scared. And the technology is there. It is a battle to fight corporate bureaucracy to actually get the technology into the hands of the key players in the industry. So, you know, back to being on the verge, I think that the technology is absolutely there. The strategy is absolutely there. It's the ability of myself and the people in this room to convince the people that write the checks to fully commit to a true mobile strategy. Not dip their toe in, but you dive right in and really accept this thing for what it is.
Is the public ready for this? I mean, I'm ready. I mean, you know, like, you guys remember seeing George Clooney, right? The black cart, the airlines? I got one. So this is mine. I've already flown 100,000 miles in United already this year. And so I have the cart. I want them, when I walk into the airport, to know I'm there. I want them to know my name when I walk up before I even get to the counter. I want them to greet me by name, have my ticket ready, know I want that. But are all the rest of the people ready for that?
It needs to add value, right? I mean, we're working on a mobile app right now for one of the large movie chains where you buy your ticket, it loads up on your phone, you bypass the line, you scan it at the, rather than tearing a ticket, you're tearing a virtual ticket. It adds value. You know, the idea is that we create something that makes your life easier. And so, yeah, we're ready for it. You know, and if walking into a store is something that becomes a more pleasant experience because of this device that you have in your pocket that makes it easier to interact with that brand or to buy something or to engage, yes.
Depends on the demographic too. I mean, you know, the newer demographic, no, they don't want people to recognize them. And they're the social ADD demographic under 25 who doesn't use email and is highly text and social media. They don't want to call 800 numbers to talk to the brand. They don't want to interact via voice. That's the demographic. You would like to be recognized because you appreciate that personal interactions. The younger demographic doesn't appreciate that. They don't want that personal interactions. They want a personal experience through technology, not in person.
But they want the benefits of what that could bring. just the delivery mechanism.
Correct.
Right?
So that's
I
what
mean, I
brands-
really don't care whether they really say my name or not. Just give me my ticket and let me go through the line and cut through everybody else. If I don't have to talk to anybody, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, so, but I think that it's, my
It's the
belief is you
experience.
guys talk about the phone, that's the delivery mechanism. I mean, it could be the tablet, but it's really, that phone will become the tablet, as we all think it will be. Because it's no longer a phone anymore, because when was the last time you had a flipping phone call, right? By and large, I mean, most of your searches now, or a majority of searches being done on Google and everywhere else online are being done through the phone. So it's really about that device, right?
Right.
Are the devices ready?
Yes. The majority of them.
So how do you get over the privacy concerns? Because I think that's where you're going to have the issue. I think it's the privacy, the security, that's where you're going to have. And I think it's going to be between the companies themselves, the brands, who have all these restrictions and everything else they're trying to fight, versus what the customer. And I think the younger demographics doesn't care about security. They don't care. I think they'll have to care eventually. So how do you get through that? How do you convince the big company that you're going to head that way and you need to lighten up on the security side?
Well, Facebook convinced them of it, right?
I don't.
Or actually, I might say it wouldn't send them the other way on big brands.
Well, I mean, no, you can't find a brand that's not on Facebook sharing, everything that Facebook owns. So I think they kind of paved the way to either play or you don't play kind of mentality.
Yeah, again, I think it's coming back to that data, and if you can convince the brands that by lessening the amount of security, opening up a few more doors, you're actually driving revenue into the door, hand over foot. I mean, it's really hard for a CMO at a company that is outdated, per se, in their bureaucratic regime to say, no, we want to keep things as tight as possible when their competitor is crushing them in market share because they're a little bit less secure and they're open to a little bit more customer data free flow.
I have a different opinion. If I'm a CMO of a Fortune 500 company or Fortune 100 company, the worst thing that happens is a front page news story. And that is what we are responsible to make sure that it doesn't happen. And so the idea is that a customer opts into things. And I think that being first or being early in this space, I think that the fact that you're sitting here today tells me that you're a first mover, that you're first movers in this room. And there's not going to be a lot of room for brands out there. So if you get customers to opt into what it is that you want, you'll be one of the first there. And so security should not be a concern. Compliance should be the concern, and making sure that a customer has said yes. And once that happens, she's only going to say yes to X number of people. There's only so much bandwidth, and that's the key. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is, mobile is very different because it is 100% opt-in, and it's different than, a lot of things that, you can't buy lists, things like that. We get that from brands all the time. Well, I need to buy a demographic of this age range that like this, and brands don't understand that it is 100% opt-in. And it is a new compliance of the MMA guidelines and CTIA and all that kind of stuff. And you will get, fined per cell phone number if you're not adhering to those. So really working with somebody that understands that, because, pulling out a 200-page document and trying to figure out where you fit into the mix, is a struggle. And that's why some of the larger brands have been on the front page, because they have, gotten popped, 10 grand per cell phone.
Yeah, and I would tell most of those companies at the same time, no one died.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was embarrassing to some extent, but move on, and you're learning those things, and no one's going to die. What about questions, guys? Over here, yeah. Say who you're from,
Sure.
So we kind of have a backgroround.
Sean Quigley, I lead the mobile practice for Perimeter. We're a full-service creative agency, and someone talked about response rates. It is 100% opt-in, but once they say yes, how do we not abuse the channel, right? How do we help our clients to say, this is the appropriate stream of communication for this particular individual, so that they don't opt out, so that we don't fall into the same trap as we did with email, where those response rates are 0.02, 0.3. How do we keep them engaged, interested, and wanting more information from our brands?
It's about the communication you're having with your customer. If if you are sending messages and putting things onto her phone 3 times a week, that's just annoying, you know. And we've kind of settled in, and it really depends on the brand, but you know, once a week is enough, and sometimes once a month is enough. And it really depends on the messaging and what you have to offer. If you don't have anything to offer, don't do it. You know, and it's real easy to watch opt-out rates. You know, we're seeing opt-out rates on databases of 4 or 5 million people of less than 0.04% per campaign. So, you know, once she says yes, she's in. You know, she wants it. There's a reason for her to have said yes. And so you have to add value, and you can't be annoying. It's pretty simple.
That's a fine line, though, right? I mean, because for some people they want more of it. It's about, so it isn't going to be about getting to a point where, one, you have best practices, and there should be somewhat of an industry standard for that, and then there's got to be some education that's got to go on the consumer. But for some consumers, they want 4 or 5 times. They might want 4 or 5 times a day. And so how do you get to that measurement? I mean, isn't there going to be a tie into the CRMs? Isn't there going to be a tie into systems?
You're going to set preferences.
It's pretty simple to watch opt-out rates. You understand?
Yeah, but I don't want to get to an opt-out rate. Yeah, but I don't want to get to an opt-out rate. I don't want to lose it. Once I spend all the money to get the damn guy, I want to keep him. So it's about...
We do a lot of mobile rewards and loyalty programs, and we give them preferences of how often they want to be communicated to, especially in the healthcare side. We may have a customer that wants to get a healthcare reminder to take a pill 3 times a day. That same person doesn't want to hear from Pfizer 3 times a day. So setting that up front, and we do a lot of full service campaigns for our customers where we run full marketing calendar just like an agency would of exactly when messaging you're going out for holidays, things like that, and then you intermit that with, you know, last minute deals and things like that. But you know, managing that opt-out rate and seeing who's opting out, and from the dialogue technology, asking them why they're opting out, and finding out before they opt out what are their preferences. If you start to see low response rates, things like that, you might want to back off of them for a while. And you know, you can track it too with unique coupon codes to see who's responding, who's not. Usually it's 20% of your database.
Can't you get smart too and hide it? I mean, so for instance, somebody might not want it from Pfizer, you know, in terms of that, you know. So let's say they take diabetes or something for diabetes or something, and they get to take it twice a day. They don't want it from Upjohn. But can't you create an app or something else that's more generic, that's really more educational, but it's still saying push and have you taken your diabetes? Can you hide behind that?
Hide behind what?
Like a third party or a different party in terms of doing it.
I mean, you can do tagline advertising on SMS, but you know, it's got to be related to the, you know, what they're getting.
I mean, there's no magic bullet to any of this. I think Thomas, you know, knocked it out of the park earlier today, discussing this very issue, and it really comes down to what is the customer experience like. You know, is loyalty easy? I mean, I get more emails from freaking American Airlines than I know what to do with, but I'm a sucker for AA miles. I'm as loyal as it gets, and I don't care how many emails they send me. It doesn't bother me because I appreciate that brand. I want the miles. I enter the contests, and they've got me, you know, hooked like their best customer. So, you know, they did a good job, and it's every brand's responsibility to go after that same effect. And then it really, you know, it doesn't, I would say it doesn't matter. But maybe
Let's go to another question right here.
I'm Andy Blocken from Kenwood Marketing. We're a branded content agency in Minneapolis. I know we're at an old marketing conference. We're supposed to, you know, kind of be all in and all excited about this, but, you know, does anybody else see like a, I don't know, like 20, 30, 40 years, like a dystopian future where, you know, big companies know all this information about where it was, what better to use? Anybody see that turn into sort of a negative thing down the road about just a little bit too much privacy infringement, a little bit too much data? Or what do you guys think about that?
You can see it in China today. That's what it is. I mean, you walk in, you know, any mall, you know, anything, and you're getting blasted with messaging. That's why location-based hasn't worked really well here, because people, you know, want to interact with brands, but they don't want brands to know, you know, where they are, except for if they're checking in and initiating it. And so I think we will look back at this conversation and things will really change. But You know, it's just like mobile payments. I mean, that's why mobile payments are so big in other countries and not here. You know, we're a credit card, you know, country. You know, we have no problems pulling out plastic and swiping. You go to other countries, it's all cash because they don't want to track their purchases. That's why mobile payments here, it's kind of like who owns the domain, because how do you get a consumer to pay with their phone versus a credit card? It's just as easy to swipe your card as it is to swipe your phone.
So, well, I don't know if I would question that it's more around the behaviors that you have. So I think the reason that they didn't have credit cards over there is because the banks didn't have them in the way that it wasn't easy to do. Nothing's easy to do over there in terms of processes, and I think mobile's going to add more to that. But you know, let me get back to your question. I think most people want to have information known about them. When you go to a nice restaurant and you sit down, don't you want the waiter to know what you normally like to order? Don't you want the waiter to know what drink that you have? Don't you want, as soon as you sit down at that restaurant, and he or she brings it over to you? See, I think it's the way in which we serve up the information. If we abuse the information, then I think there's a problem. If we do it in terms of tailor-making it to a consumer, then it's a more valued experience. I think that's, you know, I think Joe was getting to this a minute ago. I think it's about getting to the, well, I think all three of you guys have gotten this, about getting to the experience of the customer. And that's really, that's where the money is. And you can talk about all the bells and whistles you want, but if you get to the experience of the customer, I mean, if Apple's taught us one thing, it's about that customer experience.
And to touch on your point, I mean, not to make a joke out of it, but I mean, if you would see my NCAA bracket, I am terrible at predicting the future. But when I started at Dell back in 2003, they basically said, I don't know where I heard it from, but they said the most popular selling technology product in 5 years hasn't even been invented yet. And I scratched my head and I said, no way. And sure enough, I mean, here's the iPhone that hadn't even been invented then, but now is, you know, dominating everything that you turn your head at. So, I mean, that is going to, I think that is going to continue to happen. And where we are in 5 years from now is, who knows? Really, who knows? I mean, Mayan calendar, man. Just kidding.
12, 12, 12, baby, look out. 12, 12, 12. It's over. That's what we almost had the conference then, but we said we shouldn't. How about another question? Yes, sir.
Well, I think just to build on that, what you said also in regards to the people kind of want to know that. We talked about this yesterday in the workshop, and it was a survey, and a very high percentage of people said, yes, I want you to know where I am, or I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like when you download an app and it says, you know, okay to use your location, like 89% of people say yes. They want you to know where I'm at, so that you can serve me up relevant messaging or offers or whatever it is.
It's going to be the behavior, though, of how you get people used to it. Because the first time you walk up to somebody and say, hey, Jeff, it's going to freak them out. So it's about how do you ease into it in the way in which you do it. Again, I get back to behavior. You know, you build it and hope they'll come. All you have is a baseball field in Ohio that nobody will see. But if you capture customer behavior, then you'll have something very successful. Let me talk about customer behavior for a second. Because I showed the snap tags, which are nothing more than two-dimensional QR codes. So 2D mobile barcodes, QR campaigns, do they work for consumer-facing initiatives? Do you see these things working? I know everybody's trying them, they're forcing them.
Depends on what you use them for. I mean, a lot of brands are having them go to a traditional website and, you know, getting, you know, killed by bloggers and PR and so forth. If you're doing a QR code just for the pure fact of more info, then, you know, they're not that successful. If you're doing them to enter a contest, get a coupon, you know, if the consumer has a reason to engage and there's some type of reward for the behavior, then I think it's a good mechanism if it goes to the right channel. If it downloads an app, if it goes to a mobile website. But, you know, we went through this, you know, frenzy because the post office was giving you the 3 cents and every piece of mail, every brand slapped on a QR code, and all of a sudden, you know, 8 out of 10 went to a traditional website, and it just had this real bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Any other comments?
I think it depends on how you manage a QR code campaign. I think you know, a good example of something successful is we hosted a South-by party, and we sent out QR codes to everyone that registered, and when they would come to the front door to register, we'd scan their QR code, and it would send an SMS text to somebody at Vespa that could go up and greet them. So it kind of falls in line with what I was talking about earlier, getting to know your customer better. But you know, that's just one example of being able to use something like a QR code to increase the level of relationship that you're having with your customers and clients.
Joe, anything?
You know, there's always kind of the newest and the latest and the greatest thing that hits, right? QR codes, they're great as long as it makes it easier, right? So if I hit a QR code and something's pre-populated and it takes a few steps out of the process that I want to take a customer through, great. If you're doing it because you want to put a digital square box on a piece of paper because your friend at the country club, who's also a CMO, did it too, doesn't make any sense. So that's really what it's about. Are you able to utilize this technology in order to make things easier for your customer? QR codes can go both ways, just like anything.
And I think just one other last key point, you know, we have to remember your customer demographic. I think brands, we hear a lot of, well, everybody uses an iPhone. Well, yeah, everybody in this room uses an iPhone. But who your target market to, that $40,000 a year consumer, doesn't have a smartphone. So they can't use a QR code. So, you know, doing text messaging for that demographic, that could take them to a mobile website if you wanted to. They can engage with that and they know how to text. They don't even know. We did a really cool video and it's on our website if you want to see it. We interviewed over 100 consumers about QR codes and other things. And a lot of people are like, I have no idea what that is. I mean, and you can see demographics of who we interviewed, of the younger demographic, you know, more business demographic. The business folks, yeah, they know what they are. They have smartphones.
Right.
The other demographic, yeah, I might have seen that before.
Well, and much less download an app.
Right.
Much less
Download
even know
a
how to
QR
text.
reader.
Or even, QR reader.
Yeah, you gotta have a smartphone, then a QR app, and then, yeah, so it just depends on who you're targeting. So.
Well, let me say one thing. I was Scott, I don't know if you guys know Scott Stratton from On Marketing. Oh, sorry. He talks about the fact that he got an email with a QR code in an email.
Yeah.
On his phone saying if you just use this, he said the email is on this side, the QR code's on this side, my camera is on this side.
Yeah. That's a great example.
Great example. Or the other one I saw the other day, I was driving down the interstate. There was a QR code on the billboard.
Which
What the hell am I going to do with that?
They won't even shoot.
Yeah. It was bizarre. And
Actually, that's a great lead into my question. Alejandro Santamaria from Coca-Cola Company.
and you guys are doing a good job with QR codes and two-dimensional codes. I know Joe real well, and you guys have done a real good job. I mean, you've been out there, out front.
Yes.
Now, whether anybody uses that, I don't know. And you guys are using SnapText too, I know.
So, actually, that's a great lead because if you're like me, that I have 6 pages of app on my phone, if I'm gonna read a QR code, I have to browse to search where my scanner is, open it up, wait for it to load, snap a picture, hope that it's focused. I mean, it takes the whole experience until I get to the actual target to take 30 seconds.
And then you can
That's a whole world of time in the mobile world. What do you guys see in the future of how we're gonna start that interaction quicker, sooner? Something that is native to the iOS or to the Droid that you could go right on to start that interaction right away. That you double click, you can pop up your camera, and the scanning feature, mobile visual search, or whatever. What is the next?
Or something
ID
different.
system.
Doesn't this have to be something you scan, right?
So just take a picture and you will go right into
Doesn't have to, no, I'm going to open it up. It doesn't just have to be take a picture.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'll talk about, I know a technology that we're working with that doesn't require that.
So I was on a panel last week at South by about NFC, and it was kind of the verdict, you know, where's NFC going? Is, you know, the, RFID, is that, NFC to do that? And so I think the verdict's still out there, and I think everybody's waiting on Apple and to see if the new phone does have NFC in it, and Apple's been kind of vague of yes, no, maybe so. So it could be the new Siri that, they kind of just put out there and we don't know about, but I think everybody's kind of somewhat waiting on Apple to see if its NFC is in the phones, and if it is, then brands will have to get on board with NFC. I walk in and I tap something and instantly I get a Coke video or a Snoop's or whatever it is, and I tap it on the display.
So she's talking about near-field communications,
Oh,
just in
sorry.
case somebody doesn't know what that is.
I need a lot of translation when I
That's
speak
all right.
usually. So I think the verdict's still out. I mean, what do you guys think about MC?
Yeah, I mean, you have companies like Digby who are putting, all of their chips into geo-tracking, geo-fencing, and being able to understand where customers are relative to their businesses or where they are just in general. So you really don't need a lot of user interaction with your phone to fall or trip a trigger when you go into a certain location to start that interaction. So I mean, I think the technology is already there that makes it as simple as it gets to walk into a certain location or do a certain task and trigger something that creates that interaction without having to scan anything.
Joe, anything? I'll add two. I'll give you two tools that I think are really cool that I think are going to be very hot. One's Layar, L-A-Y-A-R. It's an Amsterdam company. They're funded by Intel. I saw them 4 years ago, and I'm just flabbergasted by the technology. Basically, I take my phone, I hold up my phone, and if I sign up for certain apps, it will show me where the closest Starbucks is, and behind the building, it would show me, if I had an art application, where the next closest Van Gogh is, or what's in the museum, and as I move it around, if I want to keep track of flights, I can hold it up in the sky, and it'll show me what flight is up there. I'm literally telling you this is what happened. And I was looking at it back then for Kodak kiosks. So we had 100,000 kiosks, and I wanted to do it. What's that?
That's augmented reality.
Yeah. So that's something I thought was really cool. So and it's being used, and I actually saw it in a commercial last night. I can't remember who it was for. I think it was a bank commercial to show you where the ATM machines were.
Yeah.
And you can hold it up. And I thought it was cool. Another one that I like, and I think it's going to be very hot, is called Spark, S-P-A-R-Q. It has an inaudible whistle that is emitted. If you sign up for it, if I'm watching television, if I'm at a sporting event, inaudible whistle rings to my phone. So if I'm watching a television show and there's a sweater in it, it lets me know what the sweater is. I can see it, I can use it, I can buy it. If I'm at an arena and it's a seventh inning stretch, it whistles and tells me I can go buy a Coke on the level 3 at this thing. They're half priced off during this next 20 minutes. So it's an inaudible whistle, but the frequency is picked up by your phone or your tablet, and it's a really cool little technology. So we're out of time. Want to give our round of applause to our wonderful panel. And I'll ask that you guys exit the stage as I bring up our next speaker, and then we thank them.